Okay, we're live. This Hangout on Air is an open forum for sales training. Since it's an open forum, we're going to talk about anything that you guys are running into on the phone, and we're going to start off by talking a little bit about something we talked about in the last Hangout, giving something away for free. Something we offer our clients as a perk of doing business with us, in addition to the free 10-day demand letters that we talked about previously. We can also run credit reports when our clients are approving credit for a customer, and this is something that their previous agency probably charged them for. And business credit reports are not always cheap. Well, if they're doing business with us, it's simply a perk of doing business with us. If they need to approve credit for somebody and they're not sure and they want a credit report run, we can run it for them, free of charge. So that's just another way that we don't nickel and dime our clients. What I'm going to do now is just let's open up the floor and let's hear some questions about what you guys are running into and what we can do to overcome whatever obstacles you're facing. So who wants to be first?
Mike, I was going to see if you can hear me, how my microphone is. I think I got some echo.
I can hear you just fine, Brian. Talk to me.
Okay. Had a lady that actually got my number from someone else and called me. Long story short, she had a $30,000 account that the people that owe her, they paid 20 on that, but in the last couple months she's not been able to get the other 10. She's not gotten any response. So she's putting that together, and she's supposed to be sending that information over to me. I've already spoke with Rick about it. And but one of the questions she had was, with time trying to track them down and maybe expenses to go to see them to try to collect the money, is there anything that we can do to, or do we add to maybe that $10,000 that they owe us, or is she just out her time and money anyway trying to collect? Hopefully that makes sense.
Well, we're going to add interest and collection fees onto the debtor and attempt to collect them. Now,
perfect.
We do not always collect everything, meaning balance in full plus collection fees plus interest. So that's not something you want to promise a client, but you can tell them we added, and on paid in full accounts we collect that about half the time, but typically what I like to do is under promise and over deliver. Okay.
Yeah.
Most of our competition over promises and under delivers. So being a company that can over deliver is an awesome thing. Now, any of the expenses that are going to be incurred by us in going after that are not going to be expenses that are charged to the client. We charge whatever our contingency fee is to collect the money, and we don't bill them for the PI fees, or if there's an attorney demand letter that goes out, we're not going to bill the client for that. Now, on the other hand, if it's something we have to litigate, sometimes there are filing fees to file a suit, which in that case the client would have to cover. But anything that's non-litigation is not going to cost them anything up front. And a lot of times we can get something sued for a client with no upfront fees, but we don't want to walk into a deal selling them a dream, so to speak. You know, sometimes we can do that, but it's not something that happens all the time, and it's definitely not something you want to pitch. But for the most part, as far as legal proceedings, we only sue about 1%, actually less than 1%, than the claims that come through. Typically, if we're unable to affect collection on something that comes in through our standard operating procedure for collections, there's usually not anything there to be had. Like I said, less than 1% of the cases actually have to go to litigation, and the ones that do are ones that are just a-holes about paying, and they have assets to be taken, and, you know, well, we do what we need to do to seize whatever assets are available. Have I answered your question, Brian? Is there anything I left out? Anything additional you want to add to that?
No, that helps a lot there. It's well explained, and that'll do it. Good.
Okay, good deal. And the most important thing for her is to get that account placed as soon as possible. And remember, if this is a skip account, if it's something where they think the debtor may have gone out of business or something like that, make sure you charge an appropriate contingency rate for a skip. Skips cost a lot more money to go after, and they're a lot less likely to be collected. So, you know, that on stuff like that, we've got to make sure we get a return on our investment into that client. Also, if they're planning on giving you just their biggest headache, you may want to ask them if they have other stuff that can be placed with it. Because if we go after just one account, that's a big old steaming turd for a client. We're either going to end up being a hero or end up being a goat. And guys, I know you think it's funny when I go, bah! But we don't want to be a goat.
And Mike, as far as I know, that account, I don't think it's a skip, because I think they're still in business. She's been out to try to see them, and it's not had a success. So I think they're still going.
Okay, good deal. Then, you know, standard rates on it, and, you know, let's go get our money.
I agree.
All right, and Kim, what you got going on?
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, great. Um, let's see. I'm running into some interesting things. Some people who are very disorganized. I've got a couple of people right now, different companies, they're trucking companies, and they're really stressed, really overwhelmed. The person who's in charge of the accounts in both of these scenarios is not the owner. It's actually an office manager person who's also making sure dispatch is running the accounts receivables. They just kind of run ragged. And the owners are a little more distant. And so in one case specifically, I'm trying to get them to turn over an account. I've spoken with the owner. The owner has said, yeah, I want you to work on this. I'm really sick of these people not paying us, etc. But there are many invoices involved because they've done a whole bunch of deliveries for them where it's kind of a mess. Some of them had partial payments, some of them had non-sufficient funds checks, and so I'm trying to see if there's any way to urge the office manager a little more or make it easier for her. I've already looked up the debtor. The debtor is in business. They are still, yeah, still doing their thing, and they are shopping around and using other people as well. But the owner turned everything over to the office manager and just said, okay, yeah, so turn this account over to these people right away. And the office manager is just completely overwhelmed. She's pleasant, she is trying to help, but they don't even have anything on a computer. She actually has everything in piles of papers and has to look for it. Are there any tips you can give for how to help someone who is not kind of up to speed as far as having things on a computer, printouts available, that sort of thing?
Well, the the long and short of that is there's no easy solution for her. Okay, the only way that she's going to get more organized is to start now and begin organizing things from this point forward. Now, if she has the stuff just in a stack of papers that she has to find, you may want to ask her if she has a filing system.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um, a filing system is well, these days having a file cabinet in your office is a antiquated way to do business, but it still works, and it's actually still somewhat efficient when you need to find something. You know, if you've got a folder that that's by customer number or customer name, whatever method they use to keep track of stuff, I would maybe suggest some things to her that could help her in organizing. And if she doesn't have the stuff in the computer, tell her to fax it over to us. You know, tell her, fax it to us, fax us the file on it, and I'll go through it with you and help you figure it out.
Okay. Yeah,
And,
that's a good question.
you know, there's a solution, you know, for the one that the boss said, hey, place this account for collections. And she's overwhelmed because she had dispatch at a trucking company is a job in itself. Office manager at a trucking company is a job in itself. Accounts receivable is a job in itself. Being a credit manager is a job in itself. So it looks like the main obstacle that's causing her disorganization is having to do the job of 4 different people. You know, that's very difficult, and it can be very overwhelming. But if she takes stuff, you know, one thing at a time and organizes it, and additionally, we can take some of that load off of her by saying, hey, whenever something gets to 90 days, just send it over. Okay, because in order for her to be able to do her 4 jobs effectively, okay, she's going to have to approve new customers, okay, the ones that have current invoices out that need to be followed up with, she has to follow up with them. She has to take care of dispatch, which I don't know how busy they are as a company, but dispatch dispatch can be a crazy busy job in itself, and I mean insanely busy.
That makes a lot of sense, and that helps explain it more. I kind of got the feeling that it sounded like she was just doing, having to do too much, and that there probably wasn't a simple, easy answer. But yeah, I'm just trying to kind of encourage her along and make sure that both she knows the importance and the urgency of not letting this get much older, and this being a really important account, but also just kind of listening to her tone. And I don't want to become the thing that then just makes her want to just shut down on me and not engage anymore. So thus far, it's been good, and she does sound like she's pulling the stuff together to fax over to us. So thank you.
Okay, and the important thing is you want to help make her job easier, and that's not only going to help your client out and help us out as a company and help you out as an account executive, but it's also going to build that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That way going forward, you can be the person that she goes to when there's a problem. And the thing is, with problems and things that overwhelm us, as we put things on the back burner and let them build up, it grows. And it becomes this vicious circle of mess, like a tornado.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in the middle of a tornado, I don't know what that's like, but you can ask Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. Mr. Elkins, what's happening?
Good morning. Well, I'm still waiting for this one lady who she just emailed me a few days ago saying she was going to place some accounts, and I've been working with her for weeks on, when are we going to get this done, and it's just like the third week, and she hasn't placed the ones she told me she wanted to place. So hopefully I'm going to call her today, and she's going to give us those accounts. I don't know. I have to be really careful with her or be really strong with her. One way or the other, I have to I have to find what's going to get her to get those accounts to me. Other than, or just wait for them. I have to decide that.
Well, one thing that we don't have on our side in this business is time. As an account ages, it becomes less and less valuable. What is she giving you as a reason that's keeping her from placing those accounts now?
Just time. She's busy. She couldn't get to it.
Okay. And you said she's been telling you this for 3 weeks, or have you been talking to her for 3 weeks?
Well, for 3 weeks, yeah, she said she didn't have time to place him, but she needs to place him. She keeps getting back to me, and when I call her, and then trying to get a hold of her is impossible. I try to call her by the phone. I can never talk to her again. I must have just lucked out the first time.
Okay. What you may want to do is get Reiner to maybe do a second voice talk off on this for you, and you guys do it on a conference call to see if you can get if he can get in there for you and get something moving. And a lot of times when somebody's busy like that, they're in the same situation that Kim was just talking about. They're overwhelmed, and this happens. And the main thing we want to do when they have accounts and they're too busy to give them to you is, well, first we want to acknowledge the fact that prospect is busy. Explain very briefly, and with this type of prospect, you want to be very, very short in what you say, not short to the point of rudeness, but few words, and you can explain quickly, that I know most successful people are busy. I'm busy as well. However, your company's profits are important business, and our services can improve your cash flow and make your job easier. You can even go further and say, I had a similar situation with another client, and as soon as I explained what I could do for that client and how we do things differently, they made time to get the business over and to take our advice on it. And if your prospect still insists that they don't have time to talk, they don't have time to get the accounts together, don't push the issue. But make sure that they understand we have a service from which they will reap many benefits. Ask them what time would be more convenient and give them a choice of 2 times. Okay, not just whatever time they come up with. Like we talked about the other day. What would be better for you? The end of this week or the beginning of next week? Or in this case, today's Friday. Would it be better if I got back with you in the beginning of next week or the end of next week? Give them a choice of two time frames. Let them answer. After you allow them to answer, let your prospect know that it is very simple for us to get started collecting their accounts. Okay, that there's not a ton of paperwork involved. It's a very simple process. And make sure you get their commitment to have the accounts ready for you when you call back. Because if you don't do that, you're never going to get the business. You've got to put this type of prospect on the spot sometimes and get them to get the stuff ready for you and find out when a better time is. And in many cases, you can ask them, what is the debtor's name, address, and telephone number? Who is the contact at the debtor company, the date of last purchase, and what is the balance? and you can tell them that we can get started taking a look into it now with that information, and you can send them the agreement to send back to us and tell them, look, send the agreement back with the backup documentation. And look, if they only have minimal documentation available, the collector can call them and get the remaining documentation. Okay, and I'm not talking about the agreement for collections. I'm talking about the backup documents. Sometimes a client will just send over a statement of account and say, here, go to work. Okay, and of course we go to work. Then the collector calls them, and the collector is going to be somebody who's used to getting somebody to do something they don't want to do or don't have time to do because, well, he or she collects money for a living. So, you know, they'll be able to get the additional documentation from the client if that's necessary. But the main thing you want to do is make it easy for them to place the account. Have I sufficiently answered your question? Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
I have a question about that.
Okay, talk to me.
Okay, because it's kind of the same thing, just like Edward is running into. And so how, like with the trucking example that I gave, so if I was able to get them to send over the collection agreement signed, and I've got the debtor information, and I know they're in business, and I have contact information for them, but they're lagging on getting the invoices together. And as I said, it's multiple deliveries. It's like, goodness, it's like 6 months worth of deliveries where some are paid, some are not, etc. So the tough part is they can't even tell me the exact amount until the office manager calculates how much was paid and how much wasn't paid. Is that a situation where I could take the partial information and then turn it over for the collector? I don't want to give our collector a horrible headache to go after either, so I'm not sure like where, how far I could go with that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And what I would recommend is ask them for a statement of account. Okay, they should have a statement of account on file, or they should be able to pull a basic aging for that customer. Now, if they have not added payments or NSFs into it, they need to do that as part of their accounting practices. It's something that has to be done. But if they simply have a statement of accounts, and let's say they just got an NSF check from them and they haven't added it to the statement of account yet, tell them to send that over with the statement of account, and we'll add it or subtract it. You know, whether it's a payment or an NSF, we can use that information to determine the balance, and we can even send that information back to the client. Now, on the other documentation, I don't want us to create additional headaches for a collector either, because their job is difficult enough. Believe me, if you think it's tough in sales, try being a commercial collector. Oh my God, these guys have to put up with some stuff. But part of their job is to gather information. So although we want to make sure we get as much as we can, if it's a situation of the collector having a piece of business to work without having all of the documentation versus not having a piece of business to work, I guarantee you the collector's going to pick the one that has the account for him to work, so so he can make a commission. And of course, he can call and get additional information from the client as needed. And if it's trucking stuff, you know that's going to Tom, and Tom's really good with clients. So
Thank you so much.
not a problem. All right, Mr. Wilkins, what you got going on, brother? Talk to me.
There, can you hear me? I'm on.
I can hear you, man.
All right.
Live.
I'm very new, so what I'm getting is, a lot of send me information, and so I said, okay, I'll send it to you, but I'm calling you back next week. What is good for you? And then doing some follow-ups from some old prospects like I discussed with you from the beginning of the call. So really, and it's a lot of trucking, a lot of what I'm calling is trucking. A lot of them are saying they're small, like one truck outfits, and they make sure they get paid up front, which I don't. That does and does not happen. I was in the trucking industry, so I know what they're talking about. Either they're using a factoring company, or they're taking a bunch of fuel advances and stuff up front. So that's it's just a matter of dialing for dollars and find the right companies is what I'm doing now.
Okay, and a quick point on when they ask you for information.
Right.
Keep in mind that we're not in the brochure business. We're in the collections business.
Right.
And when someone asks you for information, take the opportunity to qualify them. Not to find out what they have, but to find out if they're actually going to talk to you about it.
Right.
You don't want to send information to anybody who's not going to talk to you about business. If they're willing to talk to you about business, they might be willing to place accounts with you. On the other hand, if they're not willing to talk to you about business, they're not going to place anything with you, and you're going to run into a situation where you're calling them back and they're brushing you off again. I haven't had time to read the brochure, all of that BS. And what happens, if you get into the habit of doing that, you'll end up having 200 or 300 prospects in your queue that have asked for information that you're calling back to ask them if they read our brochure, and you don't want to do that. It'll waste your time.
So the qualifying is those 3 questions: how many 90 days on the aging sheets, annual write-offs. Is that what you're saying by qualify?
Right, and the way you do it when they ask you for information, you want to simply ask them, or tell them, actually, I'd be more than happy to email you some information. I need to ask you a few questions first, and ask them, walk right into the qualification, the how many, the how much, and the how often.
Yeah.
And if they're unwilling to give you that information, I wouldn't send them anything.
All right.
I mean, unless you just want to email it out and not call them back. And if you do that, make sure you make a note of it in your notes, so you're not calling somebody back and pissing in the wind is what I like to call it.
Right. Well, that's good. I'm obviously going to follow through with everyone that I said I would, but I did not qualify. So now going forward, I will.
Yeah, and that's so important. And look, man, I'm gonna tell you a little story about when I first did sales in this business. Now, we're talking over 20 years ago, so we weren't emailing brochures. We were sending them by mail. Okay, and you couldn't send a brochure to somebody without qualifying them. It was not allowed. It was against company policy, and they would actually fire people for that if they kept doing it. Now, obviously, we're not going to do that here, but the point was, I thought it was because they didn't want to spend money on postage, and I didn't find out what the real reason for that was until I got started in my own agency almost 5 years ago. I started by getting on the phone doing sales, and I said, man, this is awesome. I've got email now. I can send everybody a brochure, and it's not going to cost me anything. Well, guess what? It did cost me. It cost me a lot because I spent months chasing my tail and not writing. Well, I wrote some business, but I didn't write much. And I said, man, what's the problem? Did I lose my touch? Am I losing my mind? What's going on? And so I went back to basics. I said, okay, what I need to do is go back to exactly what I learned in the beginning and go back to exactly what I did to be successful when I first started in this. And I did that. And then I figured it out. I said, oh, it's the psychology of it. And had I not been a person that was big on the psychology of sales, I would have never even figured it out, man. And when I figured it out, I'm like, oh, that's why they didn't send brochures. It wasn't because they didn't want to spend postage. It was because you waste so much time calling these people back. And I mean, I'm sitting here, man. I got 400 or 500 prospects in here, man. I'm hammering. I'm hitting 120, 130 of them every day, man, calling them back, and they're not coming to the phone. They're blowing me off. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. And I mean, telling me everything but the truth. And the truth was, we have no need, or Mike, we just don't like you and don't want to do business with you, or whatever it might have been. And, well, good thing I figured it out. If I wouldn't have figured that out, we would not be where we are today. So it's a...
Next week when I do follow up, obviously I'm going to get those excuses, so I'll just go into the qualification and smoke them out. You know, and if they're not if they're not going to talk to me, then what? Push them 6 months out, or just delete them?
If they're not even going to let you qualify, send them to the kick unit, man.
All right.
And when they go to the kick unit, that stuff gets moved around a little bit, and somebody else will call them, and they might like somebody else, but sometimes some business comes through it. So a lot of times it doesn't. That's why we want to qualify. And you know, you can ask them questions like, you know, are you currently using an agency now? How many accounts are you placing with them? You know, things like that, and that'll help you get to the people who are willing to talk to you about business, because a lot of them aren't going to be willing. All of them, well, most of them have business, and I want to add a note to the ones that you're saying get paid up front. I know you mentioned factoring. I'm not sure if you mentioned com checks or whatever or not, but on those guys, find out who's factoring their paper. Call the factoring company. And I've got a precious little form in our documentation called Factor Outside Collection Authorization. And it's something a factoring company can use to send to their carriers on a chargeback date. If they're doing recourse factoring, you You know, if the factoring's recourse, which it probably is, then you can go to the factoring company and pitch them to do business with us. And this outside collection authorization is something that the factoring company can send to their customers on the chargeback date, which will allow their customers to opt out or opt in to collections. And of course, I have a clause in there that states if you don't respond in 10 days, we'll go ahead and place your account in collections for you. And this does a couple of things. Well, it helps you get access to all of the factor's customers. Now, you're not going to call their customers directly. You're going to let the factor handle it. But it also allows the factoring company an opportunity to provide a better service for their customers, because most factors on the recourse date, they charge the account back to their carrier or their manufacturer, whoever they're factoring the invoice for. Mm-hmm. And that money just gets charged back to them. Okay, now their customer owes the factoring company that money back. And when they send over new invoices to be factored, they're probably going to get the amount minus their chargeback. So their customers are getting hit on this. And if the factor has an efficient means of collections to provide their customer, so their customer can get less money unrecovered that's charged back, or should I say more money recovered that gets charged back, it allows their customer to place more business with the factoring company. Because a lot of times if a company has chargebacks with a factor, if they have too many of them, they're not going to keep sending invoices, because they're going to get paid the amount minus the chargebacks and minus the factoring fees. And a lot of times it can become easier for that customer, once they've got a few chargebacks in there, to say, hey, I'm just going to call the customer and collect my money myself. That way I get it and I'll deal with the factoring company later.
Right, right.
So it's something that allows the factoring company to help their customers, and it also helps your factoring company to help themselves to more business.
Right.
So either way, man, you're not only, when you go into a factoring company with that, you're doing yourself a solid and you're doing the factoring company a solid by giving them this free advice that's going to generate more business for them and more business for you.
Right.
It makes sense. Have I covered everything in your question, and is there anything else you want to add?
No, that's great. I'm good now.
Fantastic. Hank, what you got going on, buddy?
Hey, Mike. Yeah, there's a lot of good information. It's just interesting to think you need to qualify. And I get a lot of people that just go through the questions with them, and I agree with you. I don't need to create prospects that are not going to talk, and just get rid of them and move on. I could see how you can say you can build up and get a lot of people that are in there you're working on that are never going to do anything. So I don't need to just get rid of them and move on to the next one. I was curious, just if anybody have any feedback on different openings. We talked about last time, try different openings, what different people are doing, and what are some. I'm just curious to hear some ideas on what's working as far as a good, engaging opening question, or what different people are doing that's different from kind of what you have in the training it's working for anybody. I'd be curious to hear from the group.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give Hank some answers. Let's engage him. Tell them what's working. Tell them what you're using and what kind of responses you're getting from it.
Hey Hank, Jason here. I can only say that I really try to mirror myself to the person on the other end of the line. I don't know if you mean like an opening for a decision maker versus a gatekeeper.
Either one.
Either one. You know, my opening is really pretty simple because I was busy. When I get a gatekeeper, I'm asking immediately for the decision maker, whether that be a controller or an accounts receivable personnel. I act like I have every right to make that call when I'm calling into them, as if it's almost as if I'm already doing business with them, so they patch me through usually. Occasionally when they're doing a good job gatekeeping, I do a very short introduction of what we're doing, maybe 10 seconds, and try to get beyond the gatekeeper. I can't really give you a specific verbiage that I use because every time I get on the phone it's a little different based on what I'm hearing. So I'm sure that's not answering your question perfectly, but you know, I guess I'm just good at being a chameleon, man. I hear what's on the other end of the line and I try to mirror myself to that. Having said that, I've taken a couple beatings this week from gatekeepers and from decision makers, so it doesn't always work.
Okay. Who has some more feedback on opening statements? And thank you, Jason. Thank you, man.
I would say it just depends. What kind of oppositions are you running into, Hank?
Probably the main one is people saying I don't have a need, and I kind of go through the questions with them, and I know we've talked about it before. Are they lying or do they really not have a need? That's kind of the trick to figure out there.
Well, I think the answer that I would use and do use quite often, and I think my people can attest to this, is now, are you just telling me that to get me off the phone, or are we, I mean, that's the oldest thing in the book, to get me off the phone quickly, or are you telling me the truth? I mean, point blank, repeat it back to them. Sometimes they'll realize that their answer is not really making sense, and we're questioning them. That's our right to question them. People are always going to lie to us or try to persuade us in thinking differently, whether it's truthful or not. But the thing that I want to emphasize to everybody is we are problem solvers, number one. We're in the people business. And I don't care what service you're selling or what product, we are problem solvers. They have a problem, we realize they have a problem, and we're there to look for a solution and help them make that come to pass. So when you have a client, such as several people have brought up earlier today, and Mike has alluded to, offering them a solution, I think one of the other things that we could also offer them is tell them, right, point blank, I know you're very busy, I know you're overwhelmed with all this, but let's look at a solution that could work for you. Let's start putting this together. Place 1 or 2 pieces of business with me a week and start overcoming that big mound obstacle for your client and make it easy for them to do business with you. And let's get started on this today. Sometimes, life is kind of like a forest, and people can't see their way out to daylight. But we, as professionals, have to come up with a solution that makes sense and make it easy for them to do business with us. Because some people just have a lot of difficulty in being able to see themselves working through their huge mound of obstacles, which is paperwork in most cases, or filings, to be able to start to see daylight again. And so we want to be able to offer that solution to them. And I think, when we're calling, we're always going to hear opposition. Well, we're too small. We don't really have many accounts. Well, how many accounts do you have that are outstanding? The other day I was making calls, and a gal said, "Well, I've been here for 7 years. We've only had to place one client into collections." I mean, that is not a company that would be an outstanding company for us to do business with. I mean, one client in 7 years. That's outstanding. And I asked her, I said, "What's the key to your success?" That's outstanding. And, you got to have a little bit of humor with it, as well as understanding what's going to be a good client for us and what's not going to be a good client. Obviously, if that's true, one piece of business in 7 years, that's not going to be somebody that we want to proceed in seeking out their business, because it's not going to be a good account for you. Delete them and put in notes. Couldn't use our services due to a lack of placement of accounts. And I think that's the other thing that we have to be very careful, is to make sure in our CRM that we make good notes so we understand what's going on and what is a good prospect and not a good prospect. I'm working through some rehash stuff too that I would have kicked out immediately from what I'm running into at this point in time. But there's always two stories on every call. There's our story and there's the client's story. As Mike alluded to, he called a client that somebody had said wasn't good and never going to be able to use our services, and he got the account. So, sometimes it's just our understanding of what we think that we heard or what we actually heard. So, and what the person's telling you at the other end. I could call your client or somebody you have pursued and might get a total different result just because of my approach or what have you. As the old time saying goes, liars are buyers and buyers are liars. That will never change. So, I think it's just being in pursuit of the hunt, just like the lion searching for the zebra every day, looking for the weakest zebra that they can attack, And we're out there looking for people that are willing to have open conversation and engage, and we have the solution for them. If they don't want to engage, so what? Next, we're in the sorting business as well. We have to sort those clients that are willing to engage, willing to give us good information because they know they have a problem. We're aware of the problem, and we want to give them a good, sound solution to their problem. So I don't think there's any one real opener. It just kind of comes naturally, whatever you feel is right. And I think Jason hit it on the nail, is mirroring. Mirroring is very important, and it's a very important skill set to learn and to apply to your sales strategy, is mirroring what is being said at the other end. If you're not sure what they mean, repeat it back to them and stop after you ask them the question back. And let them respond. Sometimes I know I have this problem sometimes because I like results quickly, but I just have to learn to be patient, because those who speak first usually lose, and that's an important skill set as well, is to remember when you repeat that question, shut up, let them think, let them process, let them respond. And don't try to speed the process up until they respond. If they hang up on you, I guess you know what their response was. Delete them. Kick them out. We don't need to deal with people that are rude or can't answer our questions. We're there with an honest solution. So that would be my recommendation. I've spoken enough now. I'll shut up.
All right, thank you. That's helpful. I appreciate it.
Hank, I wanted to add, when I talked about the mirroring, and like Reiner said, I'm really being respectful to what I'm perceiving on the other end. If I get into robotic mode where I'm saying the same thing on every call, using the same tone of voice, I stop for a while because I'm not being effective. I really believe I have something to offer them. So believing that, I'm coming at it out of respect for them. If they're busy, if they're willing to talk, that's great too. I'm trying to get certain information, and when they say we really don't have a need, I do ask. I say, well, we are an extension of your in-house, accounts receivable, and we have some things that are very important that a lot of my clients feel are some of the best services in the industry, and I'd really just like an opportunity to introduce myself. I mean, that's just honesty. So that might help a little.
Great, thanks.
And that's some good stuff too. Would anybody else like to add anything on opening statements, or on what you do with the ones who claim that there's no need, the people who don't live in the real world?
I have a suggestion for the people that were saying they're running to people that are interested in placing accounts, but they're too busy to place the account with them at the time they call. I say, ask in general, is morning or afternoon best for them, and then set a conference call for the following week or the week after for them to call and work on that project with them. That's what I would suggest,
Yeah, that's definitely some good stuff too. One of the things I want to point out is a lot of times when a prospect gives you the no need story, let's face it, it's a ploy to get you off of the phone. The prospect wants you to believe there's no need, so you'll back up, back off, hang up, and the prospect can go about his business. So, I like everything that was said on that so far, and one of the things I've always done is I act surprised, and I ask them what makes them so successful, because the fact is that businesses that sell on open accounts have some percentage of delinquency. And for example, if somebody says, oh, I have no need, we never have any delinquent accounts. Man, that's awesome. Maybe you could tell me, some of the methods you use that make you so successful. One of the things I do here is consult my clients to improve their in-house department. So any tips you could give me would be greatly appreciated. And see what their response is. Most of the time, now sometimes you're going to get a cocky SOB, and they're going to say, oh, well, I'm just that good. And sometimes you're going to catch them stuttering it. Yeah, exactly. And and that's what you're looking for, and you're looking to see if you can get them to engage you. And the bottom line is, when they give you that, take it with a grain of salt, because most of the time they're full of crap. And something else you can ask them is if they have any accounts that have not paid according to the terms of the sale, even if they're only 1 day delinquent. Do you have any that haven't paid? How do you account for your success? Because I can tell you one thing: delinquent accounts are a natural consequence of credit sales, and you want the prospect to know that you know this, and you've taken their response with a grain of salt. You don't want to come out and say, you're lying. I know you're lying. I can hear it in your voice. You don't want to do that. But you know, if you use a little bit of psychology and don't spend too much time with those, you know, see if you can get them to move around it a little bit, and of course, if you can't, move on, because you don't want to waste your time. But if you ask them if there are any accounts right now that haven't paid according to the terms of the sale, even if they're only 1 day delinquent, if he gives you a number of accounts, or if he says, yes, we have some, ask to talk about those accounts. How many of them have reached 60 days? Have any of them reached 90? Can I offer you a free 10-day demand on your ones that are 90 days old that notifies your customer that if they do not pay you within 10 days, they will be placed in collections with Lyons and Associates? And that's it's a freebie, you know. Of course, our agreement with them on that is if the debtor does not pay them within 10 days, we're sending our collectors after it. And of course, at that point, you know, there's going to be fees due if we collect, but it's not going to cost them anything, and it's a way for them to find out where the debtor stands, where their position is. Because if they know they're going to be placed in collections and they still don't pay that client, and they have notification from an agency saying, hey, we're about to slam you, then whatever else that client does is not going to get them to the table for payment. And the client needs to know at that point, you know, don't take their promises, don't take their BS, don't take their excuses. 10 days. If they don't pay in 10 days, we're going after them, and we're going to get you your money. What else? What else do we have happening? Obstacles? Anything?
I have a question. How much of a percentage do you charge in interest on the collected accounts? Is it a blanket fee or is it a certain amount?
It can vary. It depends on the laws in a state, but typically most accounts allow 1.5% per month, which is 18%, and on that interest is calculated daily. You know, if we're in a state that absolutely does not allow delinquent credit terms to be charged on something like that, then of course we don't do it. But most of them out there will allow for us to add that type of interest.
Okay, so we would not want to say, because it's various states, we definitely would not want to say, oh, you'll get interest also, because we don't know. Well, I wouldn't know for sure if a state will allow interest or not. For instance.
We add it to the accounts. Okay. We do add interest and collection fees to every account that's placed. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean we're always going to collect it. Okay, so what you want to do, of course, you want to sell our services effectively, but you want to under-promise, over-deliver. Okay, and that's the best way to do this. And of course, a lot of even when we're under-promising, a lot of the promises we make seem like we're over-promising, but we're really not. And it's because we're effective at what we do.
Okay. And getting past the gatekeeper, do people like to ask for the titles like credit manager or CFO, or do you just say accounts receivable department? What do people generally like to use to get past the gatekeeper?
Well, you're going to want to find out a contact name for your person that you need to talk to. Okay, when you call, when you're talking to a gatekeeper, ask, may I speak to the credit manager or accounts receivable manager, and talk to that person. We also did you catch our hangout on getting past the gatekeeper?
I was on mute. Yes, I did. I was just wondering what people generally like to say to get past the gatekeeper.
Okay. Does anybody have any points on that?
I like to ask who handles your delinquent account receivables, please. Can you transfer me to them? And then if they have a little pause, because quite often I find that they don't know who handles that, and they'll say, oh, let me look, and I'll go, who will I be speaking to, please? And then when that person comes on, I'll go, gee, I understand you handle the delinquent accounts there. How you doing today? And I just act like I've known them for years and try to start in on lighthearted conversation and then get in a deeper conversation. That tends to work very well for me.
And you can also try, may I speak to your credit manager, please? Or may I speak to your financial controller, please? And like we talked about in our gatekeeper discussion, our gatekeepers, well, their program is screen our calls. Okay, so they're going to make every attempt to remove any obstacles, or you want to make every attempt to remove any obstacles that would prevent them from transferring your call to the appropriate party.
A lot of times they say that they are the decision maker. They'll say, well, I handle that. And so then I'll say, oh, are you authorized to place accounts into collections? One person hung up on me. So I decided, well, I'll just call back. There was a contact name, so I said, well, I'll just call that contact name later. But they'll hang up on me, or they'll say, oh, I'm the one. And then they'll say, oh, well, we don't need anything. We're doing good. We hardly have any accounts that need placed in collections, la-di-da. I can't wait to run into some unhappy people.
Well, and that just goes back to the objection for no need. If they're giving you that, and if they don't want to talk to you, get rid of them. Okay, but you want to first off, my experience in this has shown me that my ability to speak to the appropriate person comes in direct relationship to the ways that I ask initial questions. If I don't have a contact name, I'm going to say very bluntly, may I speak to your credit manager, please? By doing this, I've put the receptionist or the gatekeeper in a position of making a yes or no decision based on one simple request. Okay? A lot of times, if you take the time to identify yourself, identify your company, identify your product, you're going to give them more areas for them to quiz you and decide what their opinion is of our services and if they're necessary or not. And I mean, the bottom line is we're not in the business to selling to the gatekeeper. In a lot of cases, in most cases, sometimes they are, but most of the times they're not. But they're not in a position to say yes. So don't give them an opportunity to say no. May I speak to your credit manager, please? And could you tell me who that is and put the name down? You know, put the name in there. That way, if you get a voicemail or something and you got to call back again, you have a name. I need to speak with Bob Smith, please. And then when the credit manager answers the phone, what I do is, the first thing I do is ask them a question instead of giving a greeting. And this is different for different people. I'm more of a hard edge seller, and I'm very quick about what I say. Sometimes I'm long-winded a lot of times too. But in finding the right person, you know, I have to be quick so I can get to them, get in, find out if I'm going to be engaged or not, and get the hell out of there if I'm not, because if I'm not, I'm wasting my time. The first thing I'll tell a credit manager is, I ask to be transferred to the credit manager. Am I speaking with the right person? And the correct response to this question is yes, a simple yes. If you hear, I may be able to help you, or I work in the accounts receivable area, or I guess that's me, you might not be speaking to the right person. You know, it's important to identify whether or not you have the decision maker on the phone. Because I don't care how good your presentation is. Doesn't matter how good your talk-off is. If you make it to the incorrect person, it has no value. So you want to sell to people who have the ability to say yes. And now, don't get me wrong, you will talk to decision influencers sometimes. You will have decision influencers, but you definitely want to make sure that that person is part of that decision process. Otherwise, you might be wasting your time. And to us as sales professionals, one of the things that makes us successful is managing our time properly. And yeah, the fact is, we have to spend a lot of time finding those decision makers. But if we use our time wisely, we can make more money, we can help more clients, we can build more relationships. And did I say make more money? I believe I did. But you know, this is about having meaning and about making a profit. So we want to be able to help more people, and by doing that, of course, we're going to make money. So getting to the right person is important, and also it will make your life easier and your sales calls more accessible. So always know. You don't want to think you know, or it might be the right person. Truly know who you're talking to. And never take a no from someone who does not have the ability to say yes. On introductions, to put it really simply, when I have the right person on the phone, a lot of times I'm just going to simply say, hi, this is Mike Lyons with the firm Lyons and Associates. Do you use third-party agents or attorneys to help you collect delinquent receivables? You know, you can be very short on that, or you can say, this is Mike Lyons with the firm Lyons and Associates. we do face-to-face collections of delinquent receivables on a national basis. Do you use third-party agents or attorneys to help you collect delinquent receivables? Or something like Lyons and Associates is the most effective commercial collection agency in the country. We specialize in face-to-face commercial collections on a national basis. By using this approach, we collect over 3 times the industry average in gross collections. Mr. Credit Manager, do you currently use attorneys or agencies as an extension of your credit department? And these are, you know, just some examples of openers, but you want to get them involved in the conversation quickly. And, you know, one of the things is stating an interest, stimulating, curiosity building benefit that might appeal to their desire to either gain something or to avoid losing something. So,
Mike, I have a suggestion. Every Friday we're going to do open forum. Is that correct going forward?
absolutely.
Okay. I don't know if everybody that's on the call here understands what an elevator speech is, but I think if we work for an elevator speech, that's taking 30 seconds or less to identify our business and what we do. So if you encounter somebody in an elevator and they bump into you and they say, "What do?" You can spit off in 30 seconds or less exactly what we do. If everybody works on that to have an elevator speech for next Friday, that will help you overcome your opener situation with most people, just like Mike had just given us several examples. And everybody should have an elevator speech. That usually comes from networking groups, and I've been involved with networking for quite a few years, and that will help everybody that's on the call today. So I suggest that as a homework assignment for next Friday. So when we come on, if Mike says, "Hey, what's your elevator speech?" we can spit it out and know exactly what it is that we're talking about, and it makes sense to the other person that's listening.
And I have an idea also. On the stuff we discuss on our Tuesday hangouts, what the reason we're doing an open forum on Fridays now is so I can learn what we're running into in sales. Okay, and what I'm going to be doing is basing my Tuesday presentation on what I find is going to be the most effective thing that our sales professionals can benefit from. So this Tuesday, I think it might benefit us if we have a hangout on elevator pitches. Now we can talk about them again on Friday in the open forum, but I think it'll benefit us if I get in and I work over the weekend also, guys. But for those of you who don't know, I work 80-something hours a week. I work on weekends. I work at minimum 12 hours a day during the week. So just about everything I do in my day-to-day life has something to do with making this company more successful. I give it my complete dedication so I can provide an absolutely incredible service for you guys to be out there selling. So this weekend, I'll put together a presentation to give on Tuesday on elevator pitches. And you guys know I get kind of in depth with this stuff, so we're going to figure out how they work, why they work, some to use, and all of that stuff. And I think it'll be very, very beneficial. And I'm glad you brought that up, Reiner, because this whole time I'm talking about, in essence, an elevator pitch, and I'm not even putting two and two together that, hey, I'm talking about an elevator pitch. So let's absolutely do that. Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to add? Anything as far as questions or any obstacles before we close shop on this today?
I have one, Mike. It's a stigma, I guess. Asking for referrals from somebody that isn't a client of ours and has had the experience of our service. I just have a tough time getting through that, because in the past, over the years, if I got a referral from somebody, they were always a client of mine, and they had the experience of my service or the product that I sold them. And I just have a tough time asking for referrals from somebody that's not a client of ours. Can you tell me how to overcome that and feel good about that?
Okay, if somebody's not a client of ours, when we ask them for a referral, we want to be very, very short about it. It's not going to be obviously the same way you ask a client for a referral. A simple way to do it is just ask them, do you know of anyone that could benefit from our services? You know, and that's a yes or no question. Do you know of anyone that could benefit from our services? And there's no simple way for you to get confidence in asking that, because I know it sounds kind of cheesy, man. You're calling to pitch somebody something, and they're saying, oh, well, I'm not going to buy from you, and you're asking, hey, well, give me somebody who will. If you're not going to place any business with me, give me somebody who's going to place business. Don't make this call a complete waste of my time. I know that's what it seems like, but if you're asking a simple question before you get off of the phone, once you get somebody that gives you one, you're going to say, oh, well, that wasn't that bad. And you might get business out of it, you might not. But if you don't ask the question, you won't know. And it's something really simple to ask before you get off of the phone with a no-need or uninterested prospect. Do you know of anyone that could benefit from our services? And that's the long and short of it. Of course, on an existing client, you're going to treat referrals a little differently. But if you have somebody that's mad at the world of collection agencies, then obviously you don't want to ask them. But if you're talking to somebody that sincerely is talking to you, ask them, man. Ask them. It doesn't hurt to ask. And as you do it a couple of times, and you're not going to want to ask everybody. I know in our training it says, man, ask everybody for a referral. You don't necessarily want to ask everybody, because if somebody's a complete fool about getting you off of the phone with them, you're not going to ask them for a referral. But somebody who's got some willingness to talk to you, ask them if they know anybody. Because sometimes that question can produce a lead for you that will lead to business. And I promise you one thing, if you don't ask, they're not going to offer up the information. That I do know for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And many of these people might go to a Chamber of Commerce meeting or a Kiwanis Club or what have you, and be able to share our services at their next meeting as well.
Could be.
Okay, thank you.
Not a problem, brother. Anything else before we shut
Hey,
up?
hey, it's Frank. About the chamber, I'm a member of the chamber. There's like over 700 businesses in my chamber. How do we approach them? Just bring it up when we're at the meetings, or pre-approach with anything, like email or a letter, or
Do you go to chamber meetings?
they're not very active. They're twice a year, but I have a mailing list. I have an email list. So yeah, they only do like one mixer and one annual meeting a year.
Okay. Well, what I would suggest is if you want to look into any of the companies that are on that list, and introduce yourself to some of these people, and ask them, hey man, you're going to be at the mixer. Maybe when do the mixers take place?
Usually there's one in the summer and then one, about 6 months later.
Okay. Well,
we're waiting. Yeah.
Well, no, not necessarily wait, but you can. I was going to say if it was like right before it, you can ask them if they're going and everything. But in that case, it's a way to generate small talk. It's a way to generate familiarity, and that can help you engage that prospect. So in that case, when you introduce yourself to them, tell them, I see you're a part of our local chamber, and hopefully I'll get to see you at the semi-annual mixer. But before we get into that, it's a little ways down the road. My name is Frank Wilkins. I work for the firm Lyons and Associates. We do face-to-face collections of delinquent receivables on a national basis. Do you use third-party agents or attorneys to help you collect delinquent receivables?
Right.
You mentioned the chamber, and on something like that, you give them the familiarity, and that familiarity is going to automatically help them begin to trust what you're saying also. So, of course, it's there. You can use it.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
Mike, and Reiner, I just want to reiterate the importance of what you said about selling to the gatekeeper. I put myself in an absolute headlock with somebody who has no authority to make decisions by I got comfortable because I was having some success with the calls that I was making, and I used the same thing, and I guess this person was waiting all day for somebody like me. And they started to explain to me why they didn't need the service, and if they did, where I really should be calling, and a bunch of other things. And I got frustrated, and that's completely on me. And I put myself in the situation, but I said, listen, no offense, but you don't even have the authority to make a decision, so I really am going to have a tough time just disappearing because you're telling me how this should work and who should make these decisions. And I really, like I said, I just want to reiterate, selling to the gatekeeper can absolutely be a nightmare because you're giving them every opportunity to shut it down. I backpedaled. I went around it. But I also, kind of lost some sleep and woke up in the same mood this morning that I ended my day with. So it's very dangerous. So I really liked what you said, and be careful. I mean, and I take full responsibility, you know, but I'm not going to do it today.
And you know, remember one thing, man. Like, we set goals in life on things we want to achieve. Some of the gatekeepers that you will talk to have an ultimate goal in life to derail salespeople that try to overcome their gate. and man, you will run into them. I know I've run into so many of them, and it seems like sometimes, it seems like you may have just had one of those, that it was their ultimate goal in life to derail somebody in sales. And I guarantee you, that gatekeeper felt a sense of accomplishment after her derailment attempt, or his derailment attempt, whatever the case. But yeah, so keep that in mind, man. It's and hey, don't let it beat you up, because it can only beat you up if you let it.
Got to preserve our mental attitude. That's the most valuable thing we have other than time.
Absolutely correct.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Awesome deal, man. You're welcome. Anything else before I drop off? All right. Well, we're done for today, and we'll, of course, do another one of these Tuesday on elevator pitches. Reiner, thanks for that one, man. I wasn't even putting two and two together. So
Came to mind immediately when I started hearing that. I go, elevator pitch. So no problem.
all right, good deal. All right, ladies and gentlemen. See you guys soon.